All right. Good afternoon, LinkedIn. Nice to see you. Super excited to do something a little out of the ordinary for the nonprofit Hive. We often have nonprofit professionals, in-house folks talking, and we're mixing it up today and bringing in 3 nonprofit tech founders that I have met along my journey here in nonprofit who are all doing something super cool in the sector that I wanted to highlight that is a little bit different. You may not have heard their names before, and I just wanted to kind of introduce that. So comments, feel free to drop them in. I'm going to let each of these founders introduce themselves, and then we're actually going to take a little bit of a different route for this conversation than I normally do, because I want to hear your why, guys, for this, because we know in this sector, our why for nonprofit work is a big deal. So I'm super excited to introduce these people to talk about their why. So thank you all for joining me today. Super excited. This is great. All right, so I'm going to start off. Oh, shoot. I have to figure out Zach from Cadenza. I'm going to stop with the banner because it's not pulling in very nice. Zach, can you please introduce yourself and give us like just a quick overview of what you're doing in the sector?
Yes, thank you, Tasha, my good friend, and sweet, as I like to say, my business mom and colleague, as we have our own community hives rocking and rolling right now too. Shout out to our community hives, but also Cadenza on our side to introduce myself. I'm Zach Heineck. I'm one of the co-founders of Cadenza. Cadenza is a AI-driven grant research and management platform. We help through all stages from the grant applications and helping organizations find, win, and actually keep and retain the relationship with their donors and the grants that they are winning. So we've been doing this for a little over a year now at this point, but really excited to be here with you all and to be able to tell a little bit more about Cadenza and some of our experience of getting started.
Awesome. That's wonderful. Next, we're going to introduce John Mika, all the way from the next day, right? You're in tomorrow. This is Friday now because John's in New Zealand. So introduce yourself, please, John.
Yeah, thanks again, Tash, for the invitations to join the team. And hi, I'm New Zealand. I'm John from New Zealand, co-founder of Mika. So Mika is a payment solution for donations for fundraising events like galas, charity golf days. The why of building Mika comes firsthand experience on how difficult it is for the likes of nonprofits, churches, community groups to raise funds in today's digital world. The traditional kind of donation methods have become a lot less effective, and organizations often struggle with outdated systems and high costs and lack of real-time insights. So Mika has been designed to provide solutions like that to enhance a lot of the fundraising events.
Amazing. That's
and hello
awesome.
From the future. It's Friday morning.
I love it. I love it. It's fantastic. And Dimitri, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, please.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, I'm a serial entrepreneur and really excited to have landed in the nonprofit space. So Arbor is an AI-powered content platform that we built for nonprofit communication teams who need to scale their authentic storytelling so they can raise funds. And been in technology for close to 2 decades, and I think there's never been a better time to be building things, and just really excited about building things for this sector, which is doing so much meaningful work.
Absolutely. And shout out quickly to John Wilson, who is, I can see John says hi, and there's Daniel. And, I do think
J-Dub.
I know, I was going to say John's there. John kind of like was the glue that brought a bunch of this together, because John started showing up some nonprofit Hive chats, and just, we started chatting back and forth. We met last year in Toronto. Then I met John Mika. Zach is a new friend, but a very deep one. And I think, nonprofits have a really complicated relationship with technology often. And so I always think that the nonprofit tech companies that are thriving are the ones where it's like clear who the people are behind the work, because we end up trusting much more the people behind the work. So we're going to jump in because the questions are going to be very pointed, and I'm super excited to get started on this with you guys. But Zach, I'm going to start with you first, my friend. What was your big why for building Cadenza?
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Tasha. On our side, some of our background comes from one, having the privilege of getting to work with a family foundation that was started by my grandfather back in 2001. And especially over the last few years since COVID, I think one of the consistent themes that we would continue to hear about just whenever we were meeting with executive directors, development directors, and we'd ask them, what is the biggest need and resource that they're looking for right now, and maybe even beyond just kind of the dollars and the donation. It really came down to, they were all struggling with burnout and really struggling with employee retention, staff retention, being able to keep and actually fill positions that were really high value and high necessity positions in their organization. So once we really started to dig into that, and we realized that so much of that burnout really leads to just the exhaust that comes with the fundraising process, whether that's the ups and downs that comes with having to be responsible for what's often the least glamorous work of the organization, because you're the ones behind the scenes who are really making everything run and go. So AI is this really unique opportunity to actually do more with less for organizations, and to really be able to help them kind of capture a lot of the stories that they've been really telling over the years, and that impact that they've been making within their organizations. So whether it is communicating that impact through grant proposals, whether it's through impact reports, Cadenza, we realize by using AI, can help reduce the time and effort it takes for organizations to be able to handle a lot of their fundraising efforts. That's where we got really excited about, wow, this is a unique time of one, being alive, and as Dimitri knows and John knows, of just incorporating some of these new technology capabilities into our products and our suites, but also doing the more human stuff as well, of still meeting fundraisers where they're at, what are the biggest challenges and pain points in their day to day, is really kind of what we wanted to submerge ourselves in and try to build products that could solve problems that fundraisers had that inevitably led to burnout in our sector.
I love that. And I absolutely, the burnout piece, I think, is where some of these tools can be so amazing. Dimitri, can you tell us a little bit about Arbor and your kind of like why for building Arbor?
Yeah, so Arbor actually started as a family history project, and it evolved into this really incredible tool for nonprofits. But I first started Arbor when I was working at the company that acquired our travel company, and I was thinking about what to do next. And I had this itch to capture my family history. And so I learned how to interview people, I learned how to edit, and I wanted to start with my grandmother. And after 6 months of study, I sat down to do this, and she gets pancreatic cancer and she passed away. And I didn't get to do one story. And in that process of getting all these skills, I just really wanted to do something with them. And I felt the need to help others. So I went out to a bunch of my friends and I said, can I interview your family members? And can I do this for others? And there was just such a great reception. And other people started coming to me. I was actually doing I was running a nonprofit and entrepreneurship with John. And John's grandfather passed as well. And he said, hey, I want to help you with this idea. And our concept was, how do we scale authentic storytelling? How do we make it easy for people to get on camera and share what is inside of them? We raised a few $1 million. We brought in people from Hollywood. One of the people that joined the team was an award-winning director. He brought in all of his people from HBO. And we were saying, okay, like, how do we scale this film thing? And the answer was technology. And so we started to record, and we recorded over 1,000 family stories. And in the process, we were always looking at where are other places we can make an impact. And we started working with a nonprofit. And in recording their story, we started to see how powerful nonprofit stories were and how urgent they needed to be. nonprofits used stories to raise money, to engage their donors, to be able to prove the impact that they're making, to get other people to sign up to get that impact as well. And we just fell in love with the sector. We had already been working with a nonprofit and entrepreneurship. And so we decided to shift our focus. And that's when not just technology was evolving, but AI was evolving. And so nonprofits started coming to us saying, well, this video is great, but I need an email campaign. And we used AI to do that. And this video is great, but I need an article. I need I need pull quotes. And generative AI was just the perfect solution for all of these problems. And what was great is people were already doing this. They were just doing it in days, and we could do it in seconds. And so it was just this really great unlock. I think there's a Franklin quote, doing well by doing good. And so we really wanted to help. And Arbor's actually a public benefit corporation. Like we wanted to do something that made a positive impact in the world. And so we shifted our focus, and it's been a really incredible opportunity to work with the comms teams of these large organizations that make a big impact and help.
I love it. Fantastic. And John, I feel like probably, you know, our more North American audience that's probably joining, Mika Giving app is not even likely on their radar. And I feel like what you're doing is very cool. So can you tell us a little bit, what was the why behind Mika Giving app?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Zach, you could have gone after Dimitri. I've got nothing like that.
That's not true. John, I've sat around a table with you and you told me a story.
Midlife crisis. No. Yeah, so kind of a background on me. I've been in the payment sector since late 90s. In the past 13, 15 years, has been serving petroleums, like designing payment machines for people like Exxon and BP and Chevron as such. So 2 years ago kind of came around where I was actually on a few boards for charities here in New Zealand, and kind of seeing the effort that goes in planning events like gala dinners and golf days and just meetups and so forth. I think we got picked at the last mile. So if you look at a lot of those large corporations, they have millions of payment machines. That's why the reason why they have millions of payment machines is because that's what customers want to pay with. But then you looked at communities and they had close to nothing. So it became that kind of gap to say, well, what can we do? And kind of the years of doing payment systems, the other co-founder, John Pinkerton, him and I kind of came together to say, look, what can we do? And in New Zealand, it's all about side hustles. So we said, hey, why don't we try and do this to give back to our communities? And kind of fast forward it's gone from a side hustle to now being part of the Visa Track Fast Track program. And we've kind of gone from New Zealand, Australia, and now in North America within 2 years. So the growth where we've kind of built it's kind of hit a real massive need. So serving organizations like Ronald McDonald House, SPCA, Salvation Army, those are just some organizations that we're working with now and kind of building a lot of insights for them where we can say, look, this worked really well. This needs a lot of work for the next event, and we could actually do a lot better. You know, and I think that's kind of where we're looking to now in the why is to actually just build more effective technology, but not have the high cost model associated to it. And then providing a lot of the data that a lot of those other corporations are having as well. You know, why not us? You know, why can't nonprofits do it? So that's kind of our why, and the thing that kind of challenges us now to really kind of bring a lot of the nonprofits, communities, and churches in today's digital world. So Dimitri, don't do that to me again, bro. Don't do that to me.
I was going to say, first of all, like you kind of going, I don't have a story. Well, that's not true at all. Not at all. And I think there's an applicability to what you talked about there, John, in the, you know, you see something, you know, Zach talks about seeing something. Dimitri says that you see something. And I think there's a little bit among, especially tech founders in the nonprofit sector, that I see this like, if not me, then who? Like you're looking at this gap. I mean, even for myself, I saw community, this huge gap in community within the nonprofit sector. And I was like, well, I went looking for someone solving it and I couldn't find it. And I was like, well, darn, I don't want to do this. And, I sat around and was like, no, this is not me. But sometimes it is you, right? And you find that space. So I love it. Dimitri, we're going to throw this one back to you. There's a lot of discussion about nonprofits embracing technology. What can we do, particularly as people who are potentially more technical or have technical products? What can we do to help support nonprofits as they embrace our technologies? And maybe you have something unique you could add to this that's applicable to Arbor.
Yeah. The best technology doesn't make you conscious that it exists. It just integrates yourself into the world. What we're doing right now is phenomenal. If you tried to tell 50 years ago somebody that we will be speaking across continents, real time, and broadcasting across continents, the average person would not believe you. It would look like sorcery.
Yeah.
And here we are, not even thinking about the fact that this is happening. And that, I think, is the best technology. It solves a very acute need and it gets out of the way. And I think when we think about adopting technology, we think about how it can make an impact, we have to actually stop thinking about it as its own thing. It is a solution to a problem. So I think there's really two different ways that I like looking at it. First is there's this amazing theory called the jobs to be done theory. And it is by a guy named Clayton Christensen. He wrote a great book called Competing Against Luck. And he talks about the idea that we don't buy products, we hire products to do jobs for us. For instance, what's the purpose of a train? It's to transport. And it said that one of the worst things that the train industry did is they believed that they were in the train industry, not in the transport industry. So as soon as airplanes came, they started to have trouble, right? But what did they do? They moved things from one place to another, people from one place into another. So if you can understand the job, that's I always think about who's the person on the other side and what do they need? What are they trying to achieve? What are their goals? And how do they move closer to those goals? That's kind of the first thing, because it's not about the technology. It's about the person on the other side and the goals that they need. But that person is busy. That person is overloaded. I've never met a professional in the nonprofit space that had spare time and had a checklist that was just empty and they just needed to add more things on the checklist. And so how do you stop that momentum of busyness? Because I think the number one enemy of adopting new technology is inaction. It's believing that it's going to happen tomorrow. So there's this like great 2x2 called the Eisenhower quadrant. It's urgency and importance, right? Something could be high importance, low importance, high urgency, low urgency. And where a lot of people fail at adopting new technology or really solving their problems, hiring a product to do a job for them, is they acknowledge something is important, but they never make it urgent. They say, I'm going to solve that tomorrow. I get AI, I'm just really busy today. And so I'll do that next week, next month, and next month turns into next year. And so I think what we can do as technology leaders to help people adopt is, one, reduce the barrier of integrating this into your world, to understand, look, you're not adopting technology, you're getting paid easier, you're finding donors easier, you're communicating with your constituents easier, you're having an easier time sending out newsletters. We have to speak in the language of the work that is being done rather than in the language of the technology that's being created. Technology is just a tool and it gets out of the way. And the second thing is we have to excite people. Because if you're not excited, if you're not inspired, then the number one killer of new technology is nothing. You do nothing. You acknowledge that it's important and you want to do it tomorrow. So tomorrow is actually our biggest enemy. And the best thing that we can do is get people psyched about what's possible. And then they stop and they say, yes, I have 10 things on my to-do list, but I had 10 things yesterday. I'll probably have 10 things tomorrow. So I actually have to make tomorrow today.
I love it. Oh my goodness. I feel like this is way more than I even anticipated as an answer, Dimitri. And I'm going to ask John, like, what would you add to that, right? What would you add to that? Like, you're actually creating something I actually think the Mika Giving app, what I love about it is the simplicity of its usability for the nonprofit sector. How have you found people embracing this? You even mentioned churches and helping groups like that, which technology and churches often don't go hand in hand in a how we think about things. But how have you found it with Mika Giving app?
Yeah, I think it's kind of it's been a little bit of a struggle, and I think a lot of them have actually come from just kind of limited budgets and small teams. The large charities have been great, but what we've kind of looked at it is a lot of people look at new systems and seem quite expensive and complex. And that's kind of created this whole kind of stigma around, I'll leave that. And to Dimitri's point, I'll park that until later. That seems too complicated and too expensive.
Yeah.
But I think at the same time, there's so much things going around with CRM systems. One thing we've found is the complexities around CRM systems, which everyone's saying, if you're a nonprofit or a charity, you need the CRM system. And there's around about 101 of those that potentially you can pick. So it does become just kind of lack of time, lack of investment. And then also we've seen a lot of that being dictated by, I'd say, information overload. And it needs to be simpler.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the technology kind of comes from. So we started in a tangent where enabling every single mobile phone as a payment machine. That was kind of where we started off with. And then now we've actually been hardware agnostic and started being on these tablets that's in foyers of hospitals and churches, where it's got this big screen to say, hey, we need help. Donate by tapping your credit card on my screen. And seeing that evolution of that for hours. So we're still learning. And I think the great thing as a tech founder is at the end of the day, just listen. Because we started in this different lane, and then we've kind of ended up kind of 180 degrees where we're like, okay, cool. These different technology and the way payments are done. And we've challenged a few organizations now, like MasterCard and Visa and American Express, is there's never a way you can tap a credit card on a machine and do it reoccurring. And so we've kind of like listened to people and then make that solution easy for them to accept and not have this high barrier of costs associated to it. So again, it just comes down to small teams, small budgets, and it does become overwhelming for nonprofits. And again, trying to have that, their hand out to them saying, we'll help you. And again, no obligation to do anything.
Yeah, I love it. Zach, I have been along on your journey quite deeply over the last how many months, my friend. I'd love to hear your take on this with Overwhelm, because you've been building super in public, I would say, compared to many tech founders that I've seen. So, how are you finding it as you're, bringing on your initial testers, and like you were talking about your product, and then now people are using it and you've got it out there very much in the world. How are you finding onboarding as well as like helping it be less overwhelming for nonprofit professionals?
Yeah, I was gonna almost kind of challenge the stigma that's out there of that, nonprofit professionals are bad at, implementing technology, because I feel like it's something that, one, if you just look at why we kind of end up in this cycle where technology companies don't necessarily have the resources to invest heavily in what can be customer success or support or all these, adoptions that we're certainly not trying to give up on as we're growing and scaling. And you can see it as just the cost models of, I think where the bigger challenge is nonprofits have such little funding for operational costs, unrestricted grant giving, where they can actually apply those funds back towards resources that would actually make their lives easier. And I feel like that's one of the bigger challenges that really exists within the sector is, especially funders or donors love to give to specific programs and causes, but the people who are doing the work behind the scenes aren't really being as heavily invested in. And that makes the amount of money that they have to spend on technology products like ours and all of us in the room who are definitely trying to build, it's a lower budget amount because they don't have the tens of thousands of dollars that some of these larger companies do. And I feel like that's where that challenge becomes definitely a lot. But I'd say, as I see some of the comments in there too, it's a great call out and point that I think any technology company really needs to be doubling down on customer service and on actually the onboarding process and making sure that people are actually learning how to use your products and technologies, because that's where a lot of the magic does happen, is in those first few calls where people can understand how they're going to implement these, tools into their systems and their processes to make their lives easier. But it really starts where I think the ownership is on us to create good workflows and systems to allow people to adopt our products.
And I'm going to call out, I love that you called out the elephant in the room, that I'm even bad. My friend Tim Lockheed will frequently go, because I'll go, I'm not technical. And he's like, that is such a lie. But it's a lie I tell myself, because I look at more technical people and go, well, that's a technical person. But I use technology all day, right? It's like, and he's good to remind me that that's often the case. But I also think one part of the psychology in nonprofits that can be really challenging is that we expect a really high and quick return on investment. When I was working with a marketing and fundraising agency, if I was a for-profit business and I was like, I'm going to put $1,000 into Google Ads, and I'm going to promise you in a year, you'll get a 200% return. A for-profit business is going to go, amazing. That's fantastic. Sign me up. I'll do that math right in advance. A nonprofit is going to go, that's too scary, because that's a year from now, right? And so I think there's a little bit of that investment concern. And I love Carolyn put a great comment in here. And maybe if you guys have thoughts, but they, in this case, board member decided to pay for the tech subscription, and that's not uncommon, that you sometimes have a very forward thinking individual who wants to pay. But, this is stuff that, tech often doesn't get funded. There's not great grants out there to bring in new tech, not even talking about how technical the staff is, but like just the funding for technology. So anyone have any thoughts before I have other questions, but anybody have thoughts on how to answer this for Carolyn?
I would say the reason that people don't fund new initiatives is because there is a scarcity mindset and there's an opportunity mindset. And whenever you're in a scarcity mindset, you're all about managing risk. And so a lot of it is about shifting into an opportunity mindset. And you can do that by exciting somebody about, look at what we can do. And if we can reduce that risk barrier, and we can reduce that risk barrier by trying something small, and then building the narrative. I think a lot of times we want to have people take a leap of faith on something completely foreign, and that's really hard. The one easy way is to choose the cheapest, easiest to adopt technology, have it generate outsized value. We spent $10 and we got thousands of dollars of value. You remember how awesome that was? Well, the same instinct I have here. As soon as people have data points of prior success in a particular direction, they'll start to be more open-minded. But you can't go from nothing to a big deal. So it's all about finding smaller use cases and then getting people on that innovation train. Because end of the day, if you're trying to scale impact, which every nonprofit is, you can only do so many things with people.
Yeah.
And you could say, look, you hear how much AI is being talked about as a tool. Why don't we use it to help us do this? Look, I used it, a $10 tool to do this. Imagine what we could do with $100.
I love that. I love the scalability. I think sometimes, it's scary. Like you said, leap of faith is a little terrifying in nonprofit, and sometimes can be hard to justify, even when the spend, to those of us who maybe are in for-profit, we're like, every day, all day, let's take this bet, right? Anything else, Zach or John, to add to this great question from Carolyn?
Zach, you good?
Well, the only thing I would throw out there too is I think oftentimes we get put in this from the foundation perspective, I think sometimes there's this fear that if we actually reach out to some of the funders that we have some relationships with, that we've built that trust with over time. We were recently having this conversation as a foundation of it, at what point do you start converting grants where you might want to start out giving to a specific program if it's the first grant that you're making, but over time, as you expand that relationship, you perhaps want to shift your grants to more unrestricted giving. And I think sometimes if nonprofits are communicating of how technology could be more impactful, or how just really unrestricted giving in general is a way for them to be able to utilize their funds in the way that's best fit, such as, even if it's just employee benefits and employee wages. I think those are things that we often take for granted. And I think a great way that, as my friend Carolyn knows here, is it's really making sure that you're communicating that impact and that you're kind of doing your part of the job, which is, actually taking the time and effort to be able to demonstrate how you're actually using these technologies and how it's actually freeing up hours in your day. And I think that's something that's kind of, we need to share that ownership of from both sides.
Absolutely. John, do you have anything last to add, or do you want me to move on to the next question here? These are great.
Yeah,
guys.
no, it's a great question, Carolyn, and I think a lot of it's one of the challenges that we take on as tech founders as well, to try and simplify and get away from that mentality, to lower the barrier for them, to make sure that doesn't feel overwhelming. There is a time now where technology is now becoming a real powerful tool, and it's a matter of making sure that you see it in a positive way, and then our job to make sure that we take them on the journey and not make it feel like it's overwhelming and it's going to create complexity and issues. And so that's all I can say with that.
I love that. This is fantastic. You guys are going in cool directions I hadn't even anticipated. I love it. So I'm going to go a little bit out of order here, guys, because now I'm looking at what my questions were, and I was like, this is the last one should be better. So Zach, this is actually going to go to you first, but this can be short and sweet if you'd like to, but what's something about the social impact space that gives you hope right now? And I know, Zach, you and I just actually had a big conversation about the tech, like just the nonprofit sector in general recently, but what's giving you some hope? Because there's a lot of negativity out there right now. And so I'm trying to spin it into can be tech plus nonprofit and what brings you hope. But what's making you feel hopeful about the social impact sector?
Yeah, I don't want to dance around it too. Is another reason that there's so much burnout in our space, is because it feels like we're constantly now under attack, whether it's through kind of recent changes here, at least in the US. I know John in New Zealand over there, maybe in Tasha in Canada isn't getting the brunt of it. Maybe relationships between our US and Canadian friends feel a little, or at least on the news, a little shakier, not between Tasha and I here, but I know one thing that just comes up too is as we hear so much of the talk tracks being now of where are nonprofit dollars going, where is the impact being captured, I think what really does give me hope is seeing how so many people have been rallying around, and whether it's through, as someone like Dimitri definitely knows, of kind of capturing some of these stories through the videos that Arbor really does a great job of, but just kind of pushing back against that narrative that is so destructive and so harmful in so many ways, and so wrong of the good that we see being done in our sector and in our space. And if not us kind of doing that work, then we know that oftentimes so many of these people go, forgotten, or really have to have the harder end of really life. And I think that's something that it really gives me hope to see how so many people within our sector have been rallying together to share their experiences, to share how these programs have been helping them and helping them in their lives. And that's something that I really have just appreciated, how I feel that we are going to continue to beat back on some of those more negative narratives that are out there that I think are a waste of time and are certainly not reflective of the actual good work that is being done within our communities.
Absolutely. 100%. And yes, I don't feel any animosity towards my US Canada thing, it's another elephant in the room, but one that I've decided I'm not doing that. So, Dimitri, what would you say that's giving you hope right now in the nonprofit sector, especially as you're collecting nonprofit stories? Because I feel like you're probably getting to see a lot of the cool hope that's out there.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think storytelling gives me hope. Storytelling has been giving me hope and been giving people hope for ages. It is how we transfer hope from one to another. And I think what's important is there's two kinds of stories: the stories we tell others and stories we tell ourselves. And I think a lot of times we just need to reframe our thinking. So, for instance, earlier on, we said the church doesn't really adopt technology. What if I was to claim that the church is actually the most innovative company and organization you've ever seen? I think the church is actually the top adopter of technology. Why? Well, what is technology? Technology is like classically defined as the application of scientific principles towards human good. That's classical definition of technology. There's no bits, there's no websites, just application of technology, of science to human good. What is the number one printed book in the world?
Oh, I love where you take this. That's really interesting.
The Bible.
I was going to say, I like this.
Yeah.
The printing press was a pretty badass technology. It was the foundation of human evolution, right? We could now record knowledge and spread it. It was, the precursor to the internet, to AI, to all this stuff. And that was adopted by the church.
Yeah.
They could just see it. They could touch it. They could feel it. They could understand it. And they saw that it was a thing that they were already doing. There was a job to be done. They didn't want to write things anymore. So I actually think nonprofits are amazing adopters of technology when they understand what it could do for them. One of our customers is a huge church, and they are effectively TED speakers, right? They go out and they deliver these incredible, inspiring sermons, and then they take those sermons, they throw it into Arbor, and they create Instagram and TikTok and articles and quotes, right? Because a great pastor is just an amazing orator. And so we just have to think about things not in a way that, hey, technology intimidates me, but I have a vision for something that I want to achieve. And how do I do that? So, what gives me hope is I think no matter what is happening globally, the work that nonprofits do creates impact. And I think what we need to do is just be louder about that, because actions do the best speaking. Not this is what we believe, but this is what we did.
Love it.
This is the impact that we made. And yes, it's shitty out there for a lot of organizations right now. But I love this writer, Viktor Frankl, and he has this great quote in Man in Search for Meaning called, "Between stimulus and response, there is a choice. And that choice makes all the difference. What are you going to do?" We can't change the world as it is, but we can change how we look at it. We can change what we do. And I think the answer should be to be louder.
All right. I love it. I love it. Now we're going to pull in our New Zealander with a completely, is social impact giving you hope in your half of the world? And what does that look like? How are you feeling about the social impact space now that you're very embedded in it?
Yeah, I think it's, I've got a lot of hope right now. I think kind of working with so many communities, even schools, and seeing the uptake and, for them, despite their challenges, and seeing them kind of succeed on the other side. We've got some, this one guy, he's a volunteer and he's a fireman. And he kind of like, John, I help all these different nonprofits and charities. And he stands at the airport with his firefighter gear, collecting for things like Leukemia Foundation, Child Cancer Foundation. He does so many for the community and just local community. So what we've done with him is like, hey, can we give you our technology and see how you go with it? And he's a fireman. He fights fires. He's not this technology kind of buff. But we've seen the do-gooders come out a lot more. And what we've seen with him is he's managed to get thousands of donations, people walking past getting donations for him. And for him to say, okay, cool, now I'm going to help this community. And seeing those people come out of the weeds at the moment and say, okay, cool, I want to start doing some work for my local school, my local churches. And you see these people coming up. That's what's giving me a lot of hope right now. And actually seeing the dollars actually land in people's accounts, and then people like organizations and hospitals, and seeing the impact that you are actually making with fundraising, that's giving us a lot of hope right now. And then they can actually use a lot of data that's driving their future events. And we've kind of seen it already kind of happening, and it's and seeing it improve. That's providing me more hope right now.
I love this. You guys all have such great views on the sector. This is fantastic.
Oh, and the fireman is his name's Scotty, the fireman from New Zealand. He's just been doing it for decades. He's just this trooper. He runs up 100 flights of stairs with his gear on, and he's a peer-to-peer fundraiser, and he runs up Sky City with his gear on, and he just stands out collecting donations for communities. So call out to Scotty, the firefighter.
I was
going to
say,
let's go.
You're gonna have to give me his link. I'm gonna have to pull this in when I make an article out of this afterwards. Okay, so we're already at 41 minutes. I knew we were gonna blow over because you guys all have so many great things to say. So I'm gonna give everyone, John, this is actually hilariously going back to you just because of how the order I went out of order here. But 1 minute.
Nope.
What are your dreams as a tech founder? 1 minute each. What are your dreams as a tech founder? What are you hoping this is going to do? What's your technology going to do in the space?
Yeah, I think it's just, again, for it to evolve and increase the amount of good we're doing with creating and bringing the nonprofits on the journey of digital giving. People aren't carrying cash anymore. It's just the truth of it these days. But again, providing other solutions that we can actually expand, things that I've never thought of before that could actually help them, raise the next $1 million. That kind of thing is just learning and listening. It is kind of the dream. And for us to do that in action and provide actual solutions that's valuable for them.
Amazing. Zach, what's the dream for Cadenza?
I think with Cadenza, one of the things that we're really excited about is just the fact that because we can connect so closely into the impact that organizations are making, giving organizations the ability to more easily and effectively share and communicate their impact with their donors, with their audience, with their communities, I think are things that really give me not just hope within our sector, but really are inspiring to be able to see those stories being shared. And when we see that kind of technology being adopted as making the lives easier for fundraisers and for nonprofit staff to be able to communicate their impact and to be able to demonstrate the good work that their programs are doing. I think that's what gets me most excited and what gets me, just most hopeful about where technology could lead and could really help free up time for nonprofit fundraisers and staff to be able to use those hours back in their day, however they so choose and however they so see fit.
I love it. I love it. Dimitri, what are some of the hopes for Arbor? I know you guys have even pivoted since I first met John last year, which is really exciting because I actually think you guys are so headed in a direction that I'm like, this is really scalable and really valuable.
Our first iteration was to actually do the recording of the stories, and we felt the pain, and so we built the tool that allows the nonprofits to actually do it themselves, right? Because the more we speak to people, the more we see there's three main problems in storytelling. You don't have the money, you don't have the time, and you have the skills. And what inspires me is getting on a call with a busy nonprofit leader who is passionate about what they're doing and showing them how we can take the content that they already have and turn it into content that they need. And you could see them go like, oh my God, because not only are they excited about what they're seeing, they're also excited about seeing their calendar clear up. Because it's as if like, oh, I don't need to spend 5 hours there. I need to spend 10 hours there. And big picture, what my dream is to allow this industry to be louder for the right people. There's a great investor named Arlen Hamilton, and she has this quote that I love, which says, "You have to be loud so that the people looking for you can find you."
Yeah.
Every one of these nonprofits is doing something important for some people, not for all people, but for some people. And we can't contain the communication in letters and emailers to people who already know you. We have to be louder. And that's what inspires me to allow people to be louder and connect with the people that are looking for them.
I love this. This is fantastic. Thanks, guys. This has been really special. For those of you who don't know these lovely humans, go and find them on LinkedIn, except for John Mika, who LinkedIn and him are not friends right now. So find Mika Giving app instead, because he's been banned, or I don't know what's happening. But, you know, I think why I decided to do something that was a little bit outside of our nonprofit Hive norm was entirely because I know there are great technologies out there, but the feeling in the nonprofit sector is like, how do you find the right people? And for me, it's always been about the people behind the technology, because there's lots of technologies out there, is the honest truth. But knowing who I am dealing with, who the lovely humans are, why they care about the work and why they're building, I don't know, that makes all the difference for me. Absolutely. So thank you to the three of you. Thank you to our audience, who is amazing.
Thanks,
and put
Sasha.
in some, look at lovely comments coming in from people. Just really appreciate all of you guys showing up today and giving us your why. It was great.
Thank you.